What's up, ladies and gentlemen? We're here with another awesome interview with some technical difficulties in mind. I apologize for the audio not being what it usually is. My fancy microphone is beeping yellow, and I don't know. I'll get it fixed or whatever. But right now, the show must go on. I am so thankful that Captain Cook has been here and has been supportive and helpful throughout like the 8 minutes of torture. But I think we're on. I think it'll be okay. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Captain Cook. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, it's very exciting that you have your new record Waiting for the Moon out soon. Have a single out already.
Yep.
Looks like things are going well, huh?
They're moving along. They're putting along. That's all you can hope for.
I know, yeah. And it's very interesting project kind of based on nature and life. And I really enjoyed reading the bio, especially finding out that you're an astronomer, right?
I am an amateur astronomer. I don't do it professionally, but it's been one of my, I tend to be sort of an obsessive hobbyist. And for the last many years, I've kind of delved deep into astronomy, and I have a couple nice telescopes. And whenever I get the chance, I do point them at the sky and have a look at what's out there.
Sure, yeah. How did you discover your hobby? How did you discover that?
Well, that's interesting. I think it was sort of an evolution from a previous hobby I had was rock hounding, which I was collecting here in Oregon. We have lots of great rocks and minerals,
Mhm.
and so I spent a lot of time collecting rocks and minerals to the point where I had several thousand pounds of rock and mineral, and
Crazy.
yeah, and it got to be so much that I thought, well, I started getting an interest in astronomy, and I thought, well, that's a great hobby because you just look at rocks that are really far away and you can't take them home.
Mhm.
And so it inspired me to start looking into it. And in Oregon, there's several dark sky locations that you can go to and really get nice views of the sky. And I think with the advent of a lot of these new telescopes that are out there, the JWST, or of course I got into it before that was even launched, but the Hubble really changed astronomy
Oh
and
yeah.
uh, and just the access to it. And I wanted to be able to see some of those things. And I started out like a lot of people do with just binoculars, and was amazed at what I could actually see out there in the cosmos just looking through binoculars. And so over time I bought got more better quality gear and larger telescopes. They have a saying in astronomy, size is everything. The aperture of the telescope is really what allows you to see further into space,
Uh-huh.
especially when you're talking about deep space. And so I ended up buying a 14-inch mirror Newtonian telescope for looking at deep space objects. And it's a thrill, when you can look up at the sky and see other galaxies and that are, millions of light years away. It's just kind of, it's astounding. It makes you feel very small.
Uh-huh. I know. I mean, it must be incredible. I did some astronomy when I was a little younger, and it really fascinated me, but I don't know, I haven't looked at the telescope for a while. Maybe this will inspire me.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Atlanta, so I mean, we have some
Atlanta.
beautiful stars. I'm not in Atlanta, like I'm in the suburbs.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, you can look up and see a lot of stuff, really, it's pretty beautiful.
Yep. And of course, if you're going to do planetary astronomy, which there's sort of two main factions of amateur astronomy. A lot of people are really into doing planetary astronomy, which is just basically viewing our planets, the planets that we
Yeah.
have in our solar system, and you can even be in light polluted areas and see the planets because they're so bright. So it doesn't really matter. Even if you were in downtown Atlanta, you would still be able to see, Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune and Uranus and Venus and all these. Mercury is really hard to look at because it's so close to the sun. But the larger planets, the gas giants, especially, you can get a good view of from when you're even in light polluted skies. The dark sky objects are really when you're talking about looking at very faint objects like nebula and the galaxies, and so you really want to move to a place where there's not a lot of light pollution to see those.
Mhm. Well, I mean, that's very, very interesting. And I'm wondering, do you think that influenced your music or this album in any sense?
Well, it did. I mean, the title track, Waiting for the Moon, I was literally waiting for the moon to go down because the moon is the biggest light polluter. Even though the moon itself is a great object to look at, when you're trying to look at other deep sky objects, the moon is probably the worst offender when it comes to light pollution because it's so bright in the sky and it lights up the sky around it so much that if you're trying to look at deep sky objects, you have to wait for that to go down. And so I was in a high mountain area by myself, camping out, and I had taken my telescope with me for the purpose of looking at the sky. And I made a little campfire, and the moon was out, so I had to just sit around and wait for the moon to go down. And during that time, I was sitting by a campfire with my guitar, and I just came up with that song. It was the inspiration for that tune.
Incredible. That really is interesting. And was the guitar that you had on you the 1931 National Tenor Resonator that I'm hearing about?
It is, yep. And I've got a
Incredible.
couple. I've got a couple of them here. I can show you what they look like. Here's one of them.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's kind of a cool, and sounds really has a nice, real good projection. I have two of
Sure.
them sitting here. Here's another one. This one is polished nickel, and so it's got a real shiny look to it. But yeah, they're great instruments. I love them.
How did you find them? Like, if I feel like something from 1931 would be pretty hard to find.
Well, they are a bit rare. I have a couple of them, and sometimes the first one I have. I literally just called around to uh, music stores around the country looking for it. It was it was many, many years ago when I found this first one, and the internet was not quite what it is now, and so you couldn't just find them. And so basically, what I did is I looked up music stores across the country, and I would just call them and ask them if they had what I was looking for. Nowadays, the last couple that I have bought, I've found on eBay, but there's also reverb.com, which is a website that sells specifically musical instruments. And so you can find them on there. Those,
Mhm.
the two main resources. Occasionally, you'll find one at your local music store, but they're pretty uncommon. It's
Sure.
it's not the instrument that you're going to see the most of out there. That's for sure.
Hmm. And I mean, it's kind of crazy bringing like a guitar like that out camping. I'll show you my camping guitar because I have it on me. It's like a Gretsch,
Oh yeah.
one of those little parlors. Very
Yep.
small, very portable, easy to take camping.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I take that with me everywhere. When I go backpacking, I did 75 miles in New Mexico with my
Oh,
scout
nice.
troop, and I took a little uke, and that
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
saved us, because it's easy, it's portable. I think it's it's like a pound or less. It's super
Right.
light,
Yep.
great. And that's kind of what I took over those 9 days, and it was really incredible.
Yeah, it's nice to have that ability to have something with you. And I play ukulele too, and I have done that as well, taken that out because it's just really the probably the most portable stringed instrument you could have. It's small, it doesn't weigh very much, doesn't get in the way. You can, even strap it on the outside of your backpack, if you have
Exactly,
enough
that's what I
space for
did.
it. Yep,
It was
yep,
crazy.
yeah.
Have you been backpacking?
Oh yeah. I love backpacking. Probably haven't done it as much in recent years, but yeah, here in Oregon where I live, there is some amazing backpacking. I mean, we're here in the Cascade Mountains, and so there's just a string of volcanoes and backcountry areas and beautiful, just countless thousands and thousands of different places you can go and do backpacking and get way away from the crowds. It's a
Sure.
great place for that.
Yeah, I
Feel
know
free.
that we had our family reunion in Oregon maybe half a decade ago,
Uh-huh.
and it was beautiful. You know, the cliffs overlooking the beaches, and it's a
Oh yeah.
very kind of moody in a sense that it makes you it invokes a lot of emotion, I'd say, you
Yeah, I
know,
would say so too. Yeah. It's Oregon coast is one of the most beautiful coastlines in the world. It's
easily.
really, I mean, there's a lot of places that are beautiful, but um, I feel real lucky to live here because, it's funny because I'll go other places that are also beautiful, maybe take off and go on a trip somewhere, and then
Mhm.
I'll come back here and I'll be like, I really didn't even have to go anywhere. It's just so gorgeous right here.
Sure. And are there any other really interesting, I guess, hiking or camping experiences you've had that have related to the album?
Well, I have spent a lot of time in the backcountry of the Wallowa Mountains, and that was less of a backpacking and camping trip. Is that there is a remote lodge in the mountains that you have to fly in on a bush plane to get to. And I would go in the off season and do work around the lodge. It's a guest lodge, so in the summer months they actually rent cabins and such out to people that want to come and experience the backcountry.
Sure.
But in the preseason and the postseason, there's a lot of work to do around there, and so I got hired, or I have been hired several times now to fly out there and just spend some time out there working. And it's a great, excuse me, it's a great place because there's no roads to it.
Mhm.
You can either, I mean, there's three main ways to get there. You can either fly in on a bush plane, or you can pack in on a horse, or if you want to hike in, you can hike in. And it just depends on the snow level. If it's early in the season, the hike is going to be about a 22-mile hike. Later in the season, as the snow level gets higher, there's access to another trail that makes it about a 9-mile hike, but still not short, but not tremendously long. Um, but I have, the times that I've been out there because I bring gear with me for working, I fly in on the bush plane. It's the
Mhm.
fastest way, of course, to get, it's only about a 20-minute flight on a bush plane as opposed to, several hours any other way you decide to go.
Yeah, yeah. I know when we were in New Mexico, we would have sometimes like 18-mile days that were
Wow.
pretty pretty bad towards the end.
Yep.
Like the last couple miles are just you can't feel anything except pain. Like every step hurts.
Yep.
Every callus is there and it was certainly like a core memory for sure, getting to camp and finally getting to sit down and relax and eat. The best
Yep.
feeling ever.
Yep. Yeah, that pack gets pretty heavy after a few miles.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you have to pack all your trash out with you. So it gets
Right.
progressively heavier and heavier. And then when you pick up more food, because we only
Right.
carried food for about 3 days at a time. So you pick up more food and then, all of a sudden it's way more heavy for like the next couple of days.
Yep, yep. And especially if you're carrying some water, if you got
Exactly.
that's the heaviest.
We were in New
Uh,
Mexico, so we had a lot of water, like 9 quarts a day.
wow, that's a lot. But of
Yeah.
course, in New Mexico, it's pretty dry, so you probably don't have much access to water. Even if you have a filter or something, you wouldn't, the locations that you can actually get water are probably few and far between.
Of course. Well, and we were in the mountains. We started out in the desert area and we finished in the mountains.
Okay,
The mountains are very lush, but when I'm sure when you're on the mountain, it's especially higher up. Like one of our campsites was 8,000, 9,000 feet. There really is no running water that high.
right.
Like you can't really find much, so you got to pack in your water and you have
Yeah,
to conserve, which is very hard to do.
yeah, exactly. You get, in those dry climates, you get pretty thirsty.
Exactly. What other, so I'm reading on your thing that a lot of the lyrics on your new album, again, are from personal experience. Other than maybe camping and stargazing, are there any really big experiences that kind of shaped the lyrics from the album?
Well, every song sort of has its own individual story. Some of them are about, looking for love and relationships, and some of them are about heartbreak in relationships. There's one song called "Country Song," which is it's a little bit of a humorous song, but it really was based off of exactly what I was going through in my life at the time. The first lyrics are, "My dog is dying and my truck broke down on the lawn. It feels like I'm living in a country song." And that was exactly, my dog was dying at the time and my truck broke down. And so I, was like, wow, this is really, this does sound like a country song. And so that song kind of wrote itself. Um, Everything in that song actually happened. Later in the song, I talk about being broke. In the last verse, I talk about the sink getting clogged up and backing up into the bathtub. And that happened during that time. So it was a cascade of calamities that happened all right at the same time, and so it was an easy song to write in that respect. All
Yeah.
that stuff.
Well, my condolences about your dog, because my
Thank you.
like my dog passed away. Or not my dog. I never had a dog, but my neighbor's dog, who I formerly like adopted, basically, um, passed away in April, and that was pretty
Oh,
hard. So I totally
yep,
understand, you know?
yep. It's like a family member.
Exactly.
I have a new puppy now, so that
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
takes a little bit of that grief away. But yeah, it's hard, man. A dog, it's a family member, and she lived 14 years, which is a pretty good dog life, but even though, it leaves a big hole in your life when that goes away.
Of course, yeah. My dog also lived 14 years, 14 very long, and a lot of crazy things happened in these years. So it's kind of very surprising, you know? Like she once
Yep.
broke into a wedding, like a big wedding bouquet of chocolates and
Oh no.
survived.
Wow.
Survived another what, 12 years. So,
Yeah, chocolate can be pretty bad. Well, that was one of the things that happened to my dog too. My dog ate a package of 8 brownies
uh-oh.
one time, and she actually had no ill effects.
Yeah,
I have a couple different friends that are vet techs, and I immediately was freaked out and called both of them, and they both said, "Well, keep an eye on her, just see how it goes. And if, she starts, going into convulsions or something, then get her, ASAP into a vet hospital." But, she survived it. It's, in fact,
sure.
like I said, she didn't even seem like she had any problems with it.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so lucky.
My dog was never had any problems with chocolate or anything sweet. Like it was crazy. Not that we gave her any of that, but
Right.
sometimes like she would get into it, or sometimes it would like fall out of a pocket or whatever, and
Right.
she'd be completely fine, which is, kind of crazy. Everyone always
Yeah.
tells you it's horrible, but I guess not. What was really interesting is that you started playing guitar at the age of 12, which is also when I started playing guitar.
Oh, nice.
Um, how did you discover your passion for guitar and songwriting?
Well, when I started playing guitar, it was sort of I had played saxophone before that for a little while in school, and then I switched to trumpet, and I played trumpet for a little while. And, I loved music. And when I was 12, I convinced my parents to get me an acoustic guitar. And I realized that once that happened, I could learn to play some of the music that I was listening to, and I could hear it, and I could, even though I wasn't a very good singer at the time, I could, learn to sing the songs and play along, and pretty much immediately I started realizing that I had a knack for making up my own.
Mm,
And so mostly in the beginning, I just made up instrumental numbers with no vocals. And then shortly after that, I started writing lyrics to go along with some of them and singing them. And it just took off from there. Once I realized I could do that, it sort of became a passion, and I just wanted to do more and get better at it. And over time, obviously, when you first start out doing it, your songs aren't great, and you're just learning how to do it, and some of the songs sound pretty contrived, but as you move along in life and you have more life experiences and you can write about what's happening to you, then it just feels more stronger. It feels like these songs are actually like a gift that you get from the ethos or whatever.
uh-huh.
I'm not a not a very spiritual person myself, but I feel like, that energy's out there. And sometimes, these songs just feel like they're coming to you, that they're
Yeah,
not, it's just it's a gift.
for sure. I mean, I wish I kind of had something like that. My issue with songwriting is that I tend to be over optimistic and over, I just want to make it crazy, like epic. I love making super long and very interesting, almost like Genesis-esque epics with interesting melodies and just whatever, like as crazy as it can get. So these songs never get finished because
Ah,
there's always something getting added, or I want to take something out, or it's
sure.
ever
Well,
changing.
that's a big part of it. I mean, I write songs, some of them I'll write and bam, it's like perfect from the get-go and I don't have to change anything, but that's rare.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times I'll write something. Uh, Most of the time I'll come up with, some kind of hook or melody, and then that will be just the beginning, and then I'll write a verse, and then I'll play that over and over and over again, and then eventually I'll come up with another verse, and then I'll sort of have the chorus that I want, and then sometimes it'll just sit there like that for a long time, and I'll either put it on the back burner or I'll just keep working on it and I'll revise it and keep working on it and revise it, and it takes time sometimes. I've had songs that have taken me over, a year or two to feel like it's done,
Mhm.
and I mean sometimes it's just never done. And there are songs that I write and I just don't feel like I've ever made that real magical connection to it, and sometimes I just toss them, and be like, well, that was a good effort, but it didn't really work out. And yeah, over time and experience will let you know that that's the way it is. If you keep doing it long enough, you kind of it's easier to recognize that if it's just not working, but that sometimes those songs, you just keep them on the back burner, and sometime in the future you might, be sitting with your guitar and you're like, oh, I have an idea for that would make it right, and so, I don't really ever throw anything away. Just, but sometimes the just, the magic doesn't feel like it's there, and then later on it comes. So
Yeah,
gotta,
very interesting and very true. Something that's a little interesting, right, is that on your Spotify and on streaming services, there's only one single. So is it safe to assume that this will be your first album out on streaming?
it is.
Oh,
Yep.
congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, over the years, I've been on a lot of indie labels with different projects, but this is my first serious effort to put out a solo project. So, and my solo project is under Captain's Audio Project, and I decided this time around that I would hire a publicist and a radio promoter and actually put it out in treat it like a more of a business. In the past, I've done other projects, but it's just been sort of like, release it locally, produce a CD, sell it at shows, stuff like that. And and if I go do a little bit of regional touring, I'll take it with me and do it that way. But this time I actually decided to up my game a little bit and actually have other people involved that can help me get it out there and get some publicity.
Mhm. Well, you definitely hired the right publicist, because Howard's an awesome, awesome guy.
Yeah,
I,
he is really great. Really like
yeah,
working with him. Yeah.
I have a question though, right? What made you decide to do your first serious project now?
Well, it's interesting, and I'll explain it this way. As an artist, there's been many points in my life where I feel like my music is just sitting there and it's not going anywhere. And so I will, go through I feel like, I just don't want to like leave this mortal coil and leave it without ever expressing this and getting it out to people. And
Mhm.
so in this case, it was really one of my friends who inspired it because I have a couple different bands that I play with, and there's some opportunities to get some of my music out there, but I'm such a prolific writer I have so much to put out there. My good friend, who was the keyboardist on this record, um, I was sitting with him one day and he said, "Look, you should sit down with a microphone and a couple of microphones and your guitar and just sing your songs and then put it out there." And I it's hard as an artist. Sometimes it's part of it could be that crippling self-doubt that as artists we get. But a lot of times, even with many of the projects that I've done, you work on it so hard and then you've heard it so many times that you're just sick of it by the time you get it to the point where it's finished, and it's easy to lose the motivation to take it another step. And at this point, really what one of the inspirations was is that I knew I was going to do this recording, and I thought, well, maybe I should ask a friend if there's other steps I could take. And I've got a friend who's a has a small indie record label called Badman Recordings, and I took him out to lunch one day and said, hey, what can I do to take this to the next level? Because I didn't really even know. I've been, and it's especially, I think one of the big questions for me is that I've been playing music all my life and been in the music business, for better or worse, for a lot of years. But the climate has changed. The advent of streaming services and whatnot. I mean, in the old days, you would just make your album and then you would sell it at your shows or sell it on your website or do these things. But now, with Spotify and all these other streaming services, there's so many other ways to get your music out there. And so, I didn't know what DistroKid was, and as a distributor, and now I've hooked up with them, and they're the ones that send it out there to the streaming services. So there's all these tools that were available. So when I talked to my friend Dylan at Badman, he was like, "Yeah, here's a list." He was super helpful, and he gave me this list of all these ways that I could put the record out there. And so that was a big inspiration for it, really. It's
Mhm.
just understanding that, one of the hardest things, I guess, as an artist is that I want to make the music, but I'm not good at the business end of it.
Uh,
The business end is a whole different thing. And I just wasn't familiar with what steps to take to do it. So once I started understanding what I could do to promote my music and get it out there, I became motivated to do it.
well, I'm very, very glad that you did. And I totally understand where your friend is coming from because I run a local Atlanta label for a much different alternative type of music called screamo
Oh,
and
okay.
adjacent music styles, just because that's like the biggest scene in Atlanta right now.
Uh-huh.
So we run it and we've been trying to book some shows and stuff and get merch and we're still very new, but it is like the business part of it is very hard to get into as an artist. But because of what I do, I'm kind of already in all the business and I know all the people. So it was very easy to get into a label and start it, and it's very, very fun, I will say.
Yeah. Oh, well, good. And of course, that's awesome. I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you,
What
thank you.
what is screamo?
Screamo is I discovered it from a friend of mine. It is a type of music where it's almost like just normal guitars, very beautiful guitars and drums, and the vocals tend to be very emotional vocals. Uh and they would be saying through unconventional methods. Screamo is entailing yelling and screaming, but it certainly
Uh-huh.
doesn't have to be that. It's just a rougher vocal structure. And there's also like the scene is basically what makes it screamo. It's the type of people that go that are very accepting and open and very interesting people. And these concerts happen like underground the city,
Oh,
underneath the
okay.
city, and they're very DIY. So it's kind of that do-it-yourself aspect of it, which makes it very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I like it. It sounds good. I'll have to check out and search out some of that stuff.
Sure, sure, please do. And speaking of, searching out some music, you are basically like a folk, jazz, soft rock, just a very folksy songwriter, which is a
Yeah.
very interesting and awesome thing. What are your favorite folk songwriters?
That's an interesting question. My influences come from a variety of places, and I don't know, historically, people like Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, there's a few other older ones, Jim Croce, um, Gordon Lightfoot. Um, I feel like my take on it is a little bit more. I try to be, I try to be a little bit more edgy than some of it. I don't really want it to be, it ends up being, in this, especially in this release, it is a little bit mellower than a lot of my stuff. Um, you know, uh, Past albums I have been a little bit more, uh, I would say, folk rock oriented. They had, I would have drums and maybe a little bit more instrumentation that just made it feel a little bit more folk rock oriented. But this album in particular, I wanted it to just be bare bones as possible so that the songs were actually the main focus and the lyrics were the main focus. And I think that really came across in this one. Um, but yeah, some of the greats, I a lot of my other influences were early jazz guys like Duke Ellington and Hoagie Carmichael, who Fats Waller, who
Mm.
wrote these songs that had like sort of an edge to them and a little bit of humor sometimes. And then some of the early Americana style rock artists that emerged, maybe even 20 years ago, Uncle Tupelo and
Mhm.
bands like that. That were pretty influential in bringing out the genre of, well, quote unquote, what they call Americana.
Sure, yeah. And another one of my favorites would be Bill Callahan. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but
I haven't heard of
he's
them.
a very incredible folk Americana songwriter, and his music is almost spoken word. Like it's the
Okay.
most beautiful slide guitar and drums, and it's like a very heavenly sounding music. And then he has like a spoken word. He kind of just like speaks out the lyrics
Oh,
and
okay.
helps you digest it, which is very beautiful. And I really love his stuff.
I'm writing it down right now. I'll check it
Yeah,
out.
sure.
Bill Callahan and Screamo are two things I want to check out.
Sure. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah.
We're kind of nearing the end of our interview here because Zoom has like a time limit, and I don't pay for Zoom because I don't make money. But
Right. Same here.
I really appreciate you joining me. This has been an awesome conversation. I really do apologize about the technical difficulties. Maybe at your next album's release, we can do a do-over, okay?
Yeah, it sounds great. And thanks so much for having me on. I
Of
really appreciate
course.
it.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.